These two ballot initiatives directly affect our communities and programs that help us thrive. So it affects our education, our early learning, our environment. And so I would empower people to find more information and to have conversations with community members about the importance of voting on these measures and understanding what you're voting for.
This is Hourglass, the podcast for United Way of King County in Seattle. Up next, Ballot Initiatives, the second episode of our three-part Get Out the Vote series. We will sit down with Amanda Sandoval, United Way Director of Systems Change and Public Policy, for a discussion about the importance of ballot initiatives and two initiatives on the ballot in November's general election. We will also talk about United Way's Our Neighbor Fund and an upcoming United Way Conversations for Change event. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for tuning in. Since 1912, Washington State has given its residents an opportunity to make and revise laws directly without electing representatives to do so. The process of allowing voters to make their own laws is called direct democracy, and in Washington State, we do so at the ballot box via two types of proposals. One is called an initiative, which allows voters to place new legislation on the ballot box and then vote on that legislation in the upcoming election. The other is a referendum, which allows voters to petition the legislature to place a proposal on the ballot. A member of the legislature can also place a referendum on the ballot for voters. The state has had many types of ballot initiatives. In 1996, there was an initiative to make it unlawful to hunt black bears with the aid of bait. The 2002 election included an initiative to require license tab fees of $30 per year for motor vehicles. And 10 years ago, there was an initiative to reduce regular property tax levies by counties, cities, and other local taxing districts by 25%. At United Way of King County, we are working side by side with communities to build an equitable future for everyone. And we know that part of that work must include civic engagement. Through our Get Out the Vote podcast series, we hope to educate people on the importance of voting and encourage them to learn more about the issues on this year's ballot. For this episode on ballot initiatives, we've invited Amanda Sandoval, United Way Director of Systems Change and Public Policy, to speak on the topic of ballot initiatives, with the focus on two of the four initiatives in this year's election. Amanda begins by discussing what makes this year's collection of ballot initiatives different from that of previous years.
What's interesting is for this year, so there's four ballot initiatives across for all statewide voters. And this is, I think, the first time that the ballot initiatives are designed to repeal laws that were already enacted or already passed the legislature.
Wow.
And so now we're actually trying to repeal laws that already passed. And typically ballot initiatives are the opposite. They're to get new laws or initiative passed in the state. Whereas this year, again, totally hasn't happened in a long time, but these are to repeal laws that are already in effect, that already passed the state legislature.
Okay, so let's just dive right into two laws that we're going to focus on. What are those?
Yeah, so we're going to focus on initiative number 2109, or the capital gains tax, and initiative number 2117, or the Climate Commitment Act. And then just so people know, there's two other ballot initiatives that we won't discuss here, but you can find more information online. And those are initiative number 2066 and initiative number 2124. But for this purpose, we're going to focus on the first one, initiative number 2109. And I think this is what's gaining the most attention across media and ads and such. And this is the capital gains tax. And this is repealing the capital gains tax. And you may have seen a lot of the Supreme Court cases and just social media and ads and such. And so this initiative would repeal the Washington State capital gains excise tax, which is a tax on individuals who have stock market profits over $250,000. Right now, this revenue goes to the Education Legacy Trust account at the state, and that pays for things like childcare, early learning, K-12 education, special education, technical community colleges, and school construction. And so this tax is a very modest 7% capital gains tax on all stocks and bonds over 250,000. Now, what's interesting is this only affects less than 330 Washingtonians. That's less than 0.004%. And it generated $900 million in the first year. $900 million to go to education.
$900 million came from less than 400 people.
In 1 year alone. And so, obviously we're concerned because if this is repealed, that's going to put more pressure on the state to make up for that hole. And so that means we're going to have to make up the difference through some possible additional property and sales taxes is what's being discussed right now. And this is also going to impact our already really bad childcare shortages. And we need to update our school buildings. We need more money for early learning, childcare, special education. And so this is a particularly important one to watch and one to be really informed about.
To give people an understanding, as you just said, at a time when a state is in a budget shortfall, when cities are in budget shortfalls, and what's the likelihood that we would have to revisit this again at some point?
I don't know if there is a path forward if it is repealed at the courts. I don't think so, because prior to this, even to get on the ballot, it had to go through, this case was taken to our state Supreme Court because people were filing, is it just, are we allowed to repeal something that's already passed? And so it went through the court system. But after this, if it is repealed, it would be an uphill battle to try and get something similar to have another bill pass.
Wow.
And again, if it is repealed, this is a lot of money that we already accounted for. And so the state is going to have to find that $900 million somewhere else. And so that really puts pressure on, again, like I said, do we need to raise property taxes? Do we need to raise sales taxes? What other methods are there to find this missing revenue if it is repealed?
Wow. And then talk about the other ballot initiative that we're focusing on.
Yes. And then initiative number 2117 would repeal the Climate Commitment Act that Washington State passed in 2021. And similar enough, it passed. We've been collecting money from this. And then now the measure is to get it repealed. And so this measure would prohibit state agencies from imposing any type of carbon tax credit, trading. It would establish a cap and invest program to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And really, it would take away a significant tool that the state has to address climate change and pollution. And we know this specifically impacts our Indigenous community members and our BIPOC community members. Climate change and pollution has a disproportionate effect on these communities because of where they live and just accessibility to other resources. But this would take away millions of dollars that protect our water, our farmlands, our forests, our air, our fish. It would take away funding for clean transportation, school health improvements. It would cancel investments in energy efficiency and projects to mitigate impacts of climate change and pollution. And really, it would shift the burden of the impacts of paying for pollution from big industries who are actually responsible for carbon emissions onto communities, workers, families, neighbors, things like that. Yeah, so this is a big one and really affects future generations when we're talking about clean air and pollution and climate.
When you look at the fact that you have examples statewide, nationwide about the effects of climate change, you're seeing more tornadoes, you're seeing more severe hurricanes. Why would this come up now?
I think we're seeing this on the nationwide scale also, but it's a battle of big industries and companies who are most polluting it and communities. And I think there's a lot of disinformation, both around what the Climate Commitment Act or quote unquote carbon tax does and who it affects and what the money goes to. And like I said, this particularly affects our Indigenous communities and our BIPOC communities because we're most affected. But 10% of money through this Climate Commitment Act directly goes to tribal nations for climate resiliency projects. So 10% of whatever is raised in Washington state goes directly to tribes.
What has been the response from what you have seen in the Indigenous community?
I think across different communities, there's just a lot of, again, misinformation. People don't know where to get information. We're seeing a lot of ads. We're seeing social media posts. We're seeing conversations here in the state and also nationwide. And so I think people are looking for more knowledge and information and trying to make informed decisions, especially as it comes to this ballot initiative, but are really struggling with where to find just like matter-of-fact information and what it means. And I think also people don't understand what kind of projects this funding goes to. So it goes to things like solar panels, electric heat pumps and appliances, grants and rebates for different things like heat and AC and different projects you can do to your house to be more climate resilient. And big polluters, won't name who they are, but big polluters are also putting a lot of money into kind of spreading their story or their side of what they think people need to know. And so it also adds to the confusion of what this act does and who benefits and what the root of the problem is.
Just two more questions for you. Historically, how have people understood ballot initiatives? I mean, how easy are they to understand?
I think they're hard. There was actually a case recently for our state for the ballot initiatives to add who's funding these ballot initiatives and who's putting their name behind it. Because these ballot initiatives are actually funded by one person. By one very wealthy person and his group. And so a lot of people don't understand that this is one person driving all of these initiatives. So now they have on the ballot who is sponsoring these. They also do a really quick summary on the ballot initiatives, like what it means, but that's really not in depth. And so people have to go and do their own research, which again is hard. It's really hard to find this information online and to find information that lays it out in language that, everyday people can understand. And especially the effect that it has on our communities. Because these two all four of them, but specifically these two directly affect our communities and programs that help us thrive. So it affects our education, our early learning, our environment. And so I would empower people to find more information and to have conversations with community members about the importance of voting on these measures and understanding what you're voting for.
And that kind of segues to my last question. Where can I go to find more information?
So the Washington State, the voting website, it breaks down the ballot initiatives. I think all of the local newspapers have done a pretty good job of breaking down just like what it means. And you'll see there's obviously like vote yes or vote no websites for each of these ballot initiatives. But I would say the state voters guide has like the most bipartisan breakdown of what these ballot initiatives fund and mean and how they could affect our families and communities.
To learn more about all four of this year's ballot initiatives, log on to the Washington Secretary of State Elections site at sos.wa.gov/elections. Our neighbors are doing their best to keep food on the table, but it's not been easy. During the COVID-19 pandemic, grocery prices rose to their biggest increase in 50 years. Most of the federal dollars that addressed the food crisis during the pandemic are gone, but grocery bills remain high. That's why United Way of King County has launched the Our Neighbor Fund to invest in strategies that will feed families in the coming year. Our Neighbor Fund will help expand our home grocery program to provide 5,000 families with free groceries each week. And it will help an additional 100 schools in King County implement the Breakfast After the Bell program, impacting 49,000 students. We're asking you to please make a gift to the Our Neighbor Fund so that we can serve more of our neighbors. For more information or to make a donation, log on to uwkc.org/donate. Join us for the Zoom virtual event, Conversations for Change, Media Literacy and Elections, on October 24th at 11:45 a.m. This is a free, interactive lunchtime discussion with Julie Wolfe, News Director at King 5, and Gordon McHenry Jr., President and CEO of United Way of King County. We will discuss how misinformation and media bias affect marginalized communities, and we'll offer tips on navigating election-related media. For more information, log on to uwkc.org/events. At United Way of King County, we are working side by side with communities to build an equitable future for everyone. Hourglass United Way is a podcast that highlights how we and our partners spend time making a difference in our communities. Our work is made possible by the generous donations from people like you. Please send comments and suggestions about our podcast to hourglassunitedway@gmail.com. To learn more about our work or to support United Way, log on to uwkc.org. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for listening. Until next time.